I'm Tim with Crankbrothers, and we're going to talk about how to refresh your pedals. For today's demonstration, we're going to refresh an Egg Beater 3. When you have the refresh kit, it's going to come with all the components you need to rebuild a pedal made from 2010 to present in a clipless style or the 50/50 pedal. So make sure you reference the manual so you know exactly which parts to use for your rebuild. Tools and supplies needed to refresh your Egg Beater 3 pedals include a high quality marine grade grease, a hammer, 3/8" slotted screwdriver, a small screwdriver, an 8mm socket wrench, 8mm hex wrench, 6mm hex wrench, 14mm socket, and a 10mm socket. Now we're going to disassemble the pedal so we can install the refresh kit. Using a 3/8 slotted screwdriver, we're going to remove the end cap from the end of the pedal. Once that's off, that's going to expose an 8mm nut on the inside of the pedal. Using your 8mm socket and your 8mm hex to stabilize the spindle, go ahead and just remove the spindle nut and remove the spindle from the pedal body and set it aside. Now we're going to remove the cartridge bearing and the inner bearing from the pedal body. To remove the cartridge bearing first, we're going to use a long slotted screwdriver, and we can just poke that through until we punch the cartridge bearing out. Once that's out, now we're going to remove the inner bearing using the punch provided with the refresh kit. Take the 14mm socket and place it on a hard surface. Set the pedal body with the bearing facing down towards the socket, and then using a hammer and the punch, drive out the old bearing. Once the old bearing is out, go ahead and discard the old seal off the spindle. Now we're going to go ahead and thoroughly clean the spindle and the internal part of the pedal body. Now that all the parts are thoroughly clean, let's install the refresh kit. For the Egg Beater 3, we're going to have a new outer seal system. We're going to have IGUS bearings, new Enduro bearings, spindle nuts, and the new hex style end cap. The first thing we're going to do is install the outer seal. Simply slide that onto the spindle. Note the orientation with the smooth part facing out. Then we're going to slide on the new inner seal. And again, note the orientation with the lips facing out. Okay. Go ahead and set that aside, and now we'll install the bearing into the pedal body. Using a 10mm socket and an IGUS bearing, we're going to go ahead and orientate the bearing. Just feel for the sharp edge. You'll see there's a rounded edge and a sharp edge. The rounded edge will face inward. We can go ahead and start that just with a hammer. And then once it's in a little bit, take a 10mm socket and go ahead and finish installing. And as you can hear the pitch change, that means the bearing is fully installed. After the bearing is fully installed, we can go ahead and grease the spindle and reinsert that into the pedal body. Using our high quality marine grade grease, we just want to put a light coating of grease on the spindle body. This is just to protect the spindle parts itself for corrosion or in case any water is to ever get inside. But the good news is the IGUS bearing is self-lubricating, so it itself does not require any grease. Once the spindle is greased, go ahead and reinsert it into the pedal body. I like to give it a little spin just to spread out the grease a little bit. And now we're going to go ahead and install a new Enduro cartridge bearing. And that'll just pop right into the outside of the pedal body. Just give that a little bit of pressure. Once that's in, we're going to go ahead and install a new 8mm nut, tightened to 4 Nm. Be careful not to over tighten the spindle nut as it can be easily stripped out. Next step is we're going to install the new hex style end cap. We do recommend that you apply a little bit of grease to the inside of the hex cap to give the Enduro bearing a little bit of extra protection. Using the 6mm hex, tighten the end cap down to 8 Nm. Last step is to just make sure that the outer seal is making contact with the pedal body. Once that we know the seal is nice and snug in place, give the spindle a sharp pull and make sure that everything is nice and tight. And now we're ready to reinstall onto the bike.